You know, it's sad when you love your country so much, you're so attached to it, and you want to retain those roots. You have children outside your country, which in this case is Zimbabwe, as in my case. And, you have children that have been born and raised outside Zimbabwe. You are so attached to Zimbabwe, and you feel your children are not attached to Zimbabwe. In fact, you look at your children, you see that they are not attached to Zimbabwe at all. Akula anything kubo ebathintayo ngemvelaphi yabo. It is a sad situation. For many people abanjengami who are very, very African orientated, I should say. I'm the kind of a person that loves my roots. I love my Africanness. I love my African roots. I could never swap my Africanness for anything else. And I think my Africanness, is what gives me, a solid head over my shoulders. I think, the value that I have for my, native identity, is what gets me going every day. When I, am walking around in any country, whether it is within Africa or whether it is, in the diaspora overseas, what gives me the confidence and what gives me the value for myself, the worth of myself, is my knowing who I am. And it begins with, the fact of knowing ukuthi ngiphuma kuphi. There is nobody that is as scary, and I mean scary in a good sense here. There is nobody as scary as somebody ozazio, as somebody that knows themselves. I always say this to people, ukuthi many times when I, go out and I wear my traditional attire, the respect that I get from the community, whether I am in America or I am in Canada, is always a notch higher than the respect that I get when I'm just walking around in my regular Western style clothing. And that just tells you, Uguti, what the significance of one's appearance in the form of their own roots or tradition or culture, what that portrays to the, to the outside world. It shows somebody, Ozazio, somebody who is solidly on the ground. We are raising abantwana in the diaspora who, in many cases, could be of their own choice, could be because of a lack somewhere, giti as parents, in the way that we are, that we have raised them, discouraging them about their Africanness for maybe reasons that in some cases could be semi-valid. And I'll say semi-valid because in many cases we do use politics to say, well, there is nothing really to look back to, in my home country. Why should, my children be bothered? So, you bear children, you encourage them against, their identity, their true identity. And, they grow up, as I said in a previous video, speaking only English while you and your wife, in cases where you have the same background, while you and your wife speak one language, your children are speaking another language. While you and your wife are eating one set of dishes in terms of native foods, your children are eating a different set of dishes, which could be, hot dogs and hamburgers. And your children think when they are eating your type of food is chwala, the macimbi. They are probably thinking they are doing you a favor, or maybe because they want something. They are doing you a favor, or, So that's the type of scenario that many parents have, raised their children. And it's so unfortunate. I decided to speak about this today because ngiyakwazi ukuthi it's a subject affecta abazali abaningi kakhulu. There are many parents who are affected by this issue. I speak to my relatives, I speak to my friends, some of them who have been out in the diaspora for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Some of them have had children now who are themselves approaching their teens and probably their late 30s. Abantwana babangani bami, because as you can see, andiyazibona imele ezimhlophe njani. Ngilabangani asebelabantwana asebezaba labantwana, abangani asebe ngogogo labokhulu. And yet those children who in some cases were born here or were raised here, in all cases, have never stepped a foot in Zimbabwe because the parents have never made it an issue for them, the importance of their roots, the importance of their heritage, for all the right and wrong reasons that I've touched on earlier. Having a generation of many children in the diaspora, abanjalo, who are stuck in the diaspora trying to assimilate in cultures that will never accept them as first-class citizens. This is where now you get a situation where, and I like to make the example of, African Americans, Black Americans, who are victims of, a 400-year-old, in fact, more than 400 years of slavery. These people, baletwa from Africa and everywhere else, in the world over 400 years ago. And today, their great-great-great-grandchildren, generations down the line, are digging roots back in Africa to try and figure out where they fit, to erase the identity crisis that has lived in their generations over the many years. So imagine that happening to our children that we are raising today, cultivating in a direction voluntarily, not under duress, voluntarily discouraging them against their own roots, which is in Africa. Abantwana belungu today, they are being told all sorts of good things about Africa, and they are going to, to take gold. And I'm going to say they're going to take gold, whether they're digging it or whatever, but they're going to take gold, bring it to their countries here, but they are going to Africa because they see value in Africa. Tina, we are telling our children that there is nothing for them in Africa. You raise a child from 1 year old, as about a 20-year-old, as about a 20 years old or 25 years old, Africa. That child thinks going to Africa is doing a favor to a parent, or in fact, going to Africa is undermining their status in society. Many children are thinking like that, or do think like that, and many parents are faced by such challenges or situations with their children. How are we to encourage each other as parents? And maybe even for young parents and young parents, I should say, themselves. How do we begin to shift this ship so that it turns in a direction that suits what gives us dignity in this world, which is the dignity of valuing where we come from? The identity crisis is a pandemic in many countries. It causes a lot of distress. And Amazon United Kingdom, high suicide rates have been reported amongst the youth, coupled by a lot of criminality amongst our own youth, Zimbabwean youth in the diaspora, is recorded in large statistics involved in issues that are of concern, and partly because of ukungazazi, lack of identity, trying to find where they belong in ezifana lazona lezo. But again, ngicela ukuthi ngibuyele emuva ngithi mina into engihluphe kakhulu ukuthi ngikhulume ngendaba le is because ngilabantwana lami ngifisa ukuba sesimeni esokuthi abantu abami njengendlela uyise athanda ngayo ikhaya, meaning iAfrica, meaning iZimbabwe, ukuthi labo bazazibona if I can get them to also feel that connection to the land of the free yet, yes, Africa. And I am hoping from the comment sections in this video, I'll hear what you guys have to say. Are you facing those challenges where you have children, friends with children, relatives with children who have been raised in the diaspora outside our country, Zimbabwe, who have never been to Zimbabwe? Maybe let's say, whether they are 10 years old or 15 years old or 20, 25, 30 years old, they have never been to Zimbabwe. And the reason they haven't been to Zimbabwe is because they have not been encouraged to go there, because they don't feel that they have a connection. Kuyini esikwenzayo as parents okwenza ukuthi abantu bethu bangafuni ukuthi baye ekhaya? Maybe umntwana wami usekhaya esevele sele 10 years old. Inhlanhla at that point ukuthi uyabasuka engxenye ekhuluma ulimi lwasekhaya. But sefikile emazweni, then what? Umntwana sesiba ngumlungu. La usumenza umlungu kasafuni anything to do with ubunyama. Imagine a situation like that. And many parents condone that, encourage it, and then regret later along with the children. Because one thing I know for a fact is there are very, very few, if any, people, children, whichever way we can describe it, who grow up and consistently into adulthood and beyond do not regret an issue do not regret loss of identity. I made an example in another video earlier. In Sitimina, there was a child I spoke to at one point in one of my previous jobs, China, who was a 16-year-old kid. And she said to me, if there is one thing I will, hate my parents for in this world, it is that they worked so hard to make me foreign. They made sure they teach me only English, and yet I look so Chinese and I can never be English. But they made sure while they speak their Mandarin or Cantonese or whatever Chinese language, Mina, they made me speak, a foreign language. And today I'm sitting here, I can't even communicate with my own, fellow countrymen, with my own grandmother for that matter. And I feel that I'm lost even going to my own country of heritage. So, indaba yanamhla le bantu bakithi isihlobo zami, I just thought to talk about this, just an interesting subject that touches me, and I hope it touches you too in a good way. And if it's an issue, an issue or a subject that actually resonates with your situation in particular, I'd love to hear what you say in the comments. Is there anything that you are doing differently to change the situation? If it's a situation that you don't like, if it's a situation that you like, why do you like it? Why do you want it to stay that way? I guess welcome to Asixoxeni. Let's talk with uSiziba. My name is uSiziba. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please subscribe to the channel if you like what you're hearing. Share the channel with your friends. Let's grow the community. Mfuna sikhule sonke on this channel. Lize libone inwele sezimhlophe times 3. We are going to grow together on this channel. Thank you so much.